In 1922, an American farmer named Charles Osborne was hauling a hog to slaughter when he fell down and got the hiccups. Nothing unusual about that, except these hiccups didn't stop. Not that day, not that week, not that year. Charles Osborne hiccuped continuously, around the clock, for the next 68 years. By the time they finally stopped on their own in 1990, 1 year before he died, doctors estimate he had hiccuped roughly 430 million times. Sit with that. A man hiccuped without a break for longer than most people are alive. And here's the truly unsettling part. In all those decades, with all that medical attention, no doctor could fully explain why it was happening. Because no one can fully explain why hiccups happen at all. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about the hiccup. It is, biologically speaking, completely useless. It does nothing for you. It helps you in no way. In fact, a hiccup is one of the few things your body does that is actively counterproductive, and we'll get to exactly why in a second. And yet it is hardwired into you, into nearly every mammal alive, and into the brain of every human baby before it's even born. Evolution is ruthless. It does not keep useless things around for hundreds of millions of years by accident. So that's the real mystery. Not the man who couldn't stop. The mystery is why you do it at all. Why does your body come equipped from before birth with a reflex that serves no purpose? The answer turns out to be one of the strangest stories your own body has to tell. A story that reaches back 370 million years to a creature you would not recognize as your ancestor. To be blunt, when you hiccup, you are briefly running software written for a fish. But first, you need to understand what a hiccup actually is, because it's weirder than you think. A hiccup is two things happening in sequence, incredibly fast. First, your diaphragm, the big muscle under your lungs that powers your breathing, suddenly spasms, yanking downward and pulling a sharp gulp of air into your lungs. So far, that's just a sudden breath. But then, about 35 milliseconds later, faster than you can blink, the glottis, the flap at the top of your windpipe where your vocal cords sit, snaps violently shut. Slam. And that's the hic. The sound is the door slamming on the air you just pulled in. Now, think about what that means. Your body just took a sharp breath and then instantly sealed off your windpipe so that breath couldn't actually go anywhere. You inhaled and then immediately canceled it. A hiccup is a breath that does nothing. It's not bringing in oxygen. It's not clearing anything out. It's a perfectly pointless action your body performs against your will. That is the heart of the mystery. Why would your body bother to build and keep a reflex whose entire job is to take a breath and then throw it away? And remember Charles Osborne, his body did exactly this 430 million times for no reason at all for 68 years. To solve this, scientists had to stop asking, "What is the hiccup for?" and start asking, "What does the hiccup remind us of?" And when they looked closely at the exact pattern of it, the sharp intake followed instantly by the closing of the airway, they realized they had seen this exact motor program somewhere before. Not in humans, in tadpoles. This is the leading theory, proposed by a French researcher named Christian Strauss and his colleagues. Think about how a tadpole, or a fish, or a creature with gills breathes. It pulls water into its mouth, and then it pushes that water out across its gills, and critically, it has to close off the passage to its lungs so the water goes over the gills and not down into the airway. Pull in, then snap the airway shut. Pull in, snap shut. Does that sound familiar? It's the hiccup. The exact same two-part motor pattern. The same brainstem circuitry that once controlled gill ventilation in our distant aquatic ancestors appears to be the very same circuitry that produces the hiccup in you today. So the hiccup may be an evolutionary fossil, a leftover, a ghost in your nervous system from roughly 370 million years ago, when the creatures we descended from breathed water through gills. That ancient program was never deleted. It got buried under hundreds of millions of years of new biology, and every so often, when something irritates the nerves involved, it twitches back to life, and for a moment, you are breathing like a tadpole. The most useless thing your body does might be the oldest thing about it. But that's not the whole story, because there's a second clue, and it comes from the most surprising place imaginable. The womb. Fetuses hiccup. Constantly. A developing baby starts hiccuping around 9 weeks after conception, and here's the staggering part. A fetus hiccups more than it does practice breathing. Inside the womb, where there's no air to breathe, where the hiccup can't possibly be serving its normal function, babies hiccup all the time. Mothers feel it as little rhythmic jolts. So now the mystery deepens. Why would a creature that isn't even breathing air yet spend so much energy on this pointless reflex? And in 2019, researchers at University College London, led by Lorenzo Fabrizi, found a possible answer that's genuinely beautiful. They studied premature babies and discovered that every time the baby hiccuped, it triggered a large burst of brain activity, a big wave rolling across the developing brain. Their theory is that hiccups might be how a baby's brain learns to map its own body. Each hiccup sends a loud, clear signal up to the brain. This is your diaphragm. This is where it is. This is how it moves. The hiccup may be one of the first ways your brain ever figured out that it had lungs, and learned how to control the muscles that would one day keep you alive. Before you took a single breath, the hiccup may have been teaching your brain how. There's even a third theory focused on newborns. A researcher named Daniel Howes suggested that hiccups help nursing babies. When a baby feeds, it swallows air along with the milk, and that air takes up space in the tiny stomach. A hiccup, with its sharp diaphragm contraction and sealed airway, might help force that swallowed air back up, making room for more milk while the closed glottis protects the lungs. Useful for a feeding infant. Which fits the pattern perfectly. Babies hiccup enormously, and we hiccup less and less as we grow up. The reflex fades as we stop needing it, but it never fully leaves. Humans have been baffled and annoyed by this forever. In Plato's Symposium, written about 2,400 years ago, there's a famous scene where one of the guests, the playwright Aristophanes, gets a fit of the hiccups and can't speak. And he's given advice that hiccup sufferers still try today. Hold your breath, gargle water, or tickle your nose to make yourself sneeze. 24 centuries later, we're still using the same desperate tricks. And the word itself, hiccup, is just us imitating the sound. Almost every language has its own little onomatopoeia for it, a word built from the noise of the door slamming in your throat. And those folk cures? Some of them actually work, and now we understand why. The reflex runs along two major nerves, the phrenic nerve, which drives the diaphragm, and the vagus nerve, which wanders through your chest and gut. Most hiccup cures work by either flooding your system with carbon dioxide, that's the breath holding, or by jolting those nerves with a competing signal, which is what swallowing, gargling, or a sudden fright actually does. In 2021, a doctor named Ali Sifi even patented a special rigid straw that forces you to suck and swallow hard at the same time, stimulating both nerves at once, and in testing, it stopped hiccups for the large majority of people who used it. We finally built a device to interrupt a reflex left over from our fish ancestors. So let's pull it all together, because the reframe changes how you'll feel about this forever. The hiccup is not a glitch. It's not your body malfunctioning. It is a memory, one of the deepest, oldest memories your body still carries. It is the rhythm of an ancestor that breathed underwater, preserved in your brainstem for 370 million years. It's the signal that may have taught your unborn brain where your lungs were. It's a relic from your first days at your mother's breast. The hiccup is useless to you now, precisely because it was built for creatures and stages of life you've already moved beyond. It's not pointing forward, it's pointing back. So here is what I want to leave you with. The next time you get the hiccups, the next time that annoying, involuntary little hic interrupts your sentence and you reach for a glass of water, I want you to remember what's actually happening. For a few minutes, a 370 million-year-old program is flickering back to life inside you. You are, briefly, running the same motor pattern as a creature pushing water over its gills in an ancient sea. You are echoing the reflex that, before you were born, helped your own brain discover that it had a body at all. Charles Osborn lived with that ancient echo for 68 years, and it never gave him an answer. But you have one now. The most useless thing your body does isn't a mistake. It's the oldest part of you, refusing to be forgotten.